Jesse Allen here with the American Ag Network, and pleased to have on with us here today. We have Mike Hamilton. He is the vice president, and also he is in charge of the business side, the business director for AdvanSix, business director of plant nutrients. And Mike, I appreciate the time today. Thanks for joining us, sir. How are you?
Hey, thank you for having me on.
Well, Mike, let's talk a little bit about ammonium sulfate on soybeans. We saw in the last prospective plantings report, there is a big shift to soybean acres here this year. And so there's going to be a lot of talk about, getting that crop in the ground and also taking care of that crop and finding a fertilizer for soybeans. So talk about ammonium sulfate and how you guys at AdvanSix have figured out how this works and helps out a soybean crop.
Yeah, so the background in our efforts around understanding the use of ammonium sulfate on soybeans, which is an application that historically is not widespread. It started about 6 years ago. We learned that one of our university research partners had planted a soybean crop and it had very heavy rains. For to look at what he could do to try to save the crop, he tried a variety of treatments, and one of those treatments was ammonium sulfate, and it turns out that one had the best response. And so we learned about it from him, and then we began partnering with him to do a more widespread research on just looking at soybeans and the benefits of using sulfate. Continued to see positive results. We branched out to some other universities beyond that, and then last year, we started our own field trial program, Supplement Your Soybeans, where we partnered directly with 6 growers to generate on-farm results. 6 growers in the Midwest, and this year we're gonna expand to 7 growers, and we continue to see good results. And our goal is continue to work with universities, work with growers, understand with growers that are trying to push their yields on soybeans, and also looking at quality as well, the benefits of ammonium sulfate and the immediately available nitrogen and sulfate that ammonium sulfate brings.
Well, and you mentioned it, and obviously trying to push those yields higher. We have high input costs. So we have great pricing on the commodity side on the markets. So obviously growers are looking for a little something to kind of help that ROI. And it sounds like using ammonium sulfate is something that could be very key into helping push those yields higher, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, as you noted, I mean, we also have high grain prices. Obviously, input costs have gone up. We've seen inflation across the board. But what we still see is when we look at our ROI calculators for the benefit you get from adding the benefit you get from adding ammonium sulfate to crops like soybeans and corn is that the incremental benefits still justify the investment.
Now, thinking as well about supply chain issues, pricing, et cetera, we know a lot of fertilizers have shot up in price here in the last 6 to 12 months. Talking about ammonium sulfate, what do you see with just the general pricing outlook, and also, are farmers going to be able to take advantage and use it on certain crops here as we go through not only this year but into next year, Mike?
Yeah, so on the price side, I think what we've seen is sulfate is sort of right along with other nitrogen fertilizers and probably fertilizers in general. I mean, we saw sort of a 18-month pattern that started as we came out of the pandemic in late 2020, where the first thing we saw was demand for food and grains was increasing, and the production was lower than expected. So we saw a tighter supply demand scenario around grain, and we started to see grain prices move up in early 2021 in particular. And what happens when grain prices move up is growers plant more acres, they optimize their fertilizer use, so the demand for fertilizer goes up. At the same time, we saw some weather-related outages in the winter of 2021, early 2021. Also some increased turnaround activity. One of the things that happened in the pandemic is a lot of folks delayed big outages and they had to take those outages. So you had higher demand for fertilizer, a little bit of decreased supply, and just like the grains, better supply demand, you saw pricing going up. And then I think things really got complicated with more geopolitical type implications in late 2021. I mean, we saw energy prices escalate significantly. Places like Europe and China. China decided to start restricting fertilizer exports. So now you have, even reduced supply. Europe gas costs went extremely high. So their cost of production went up. And some of the companies that make nitrogen fertilizer in Europe actually either shut down or curtailed their supply. So that was a further cut in supply. You're still backed by strong demand based on, the grain outlook and the food outlook in the world. Then we enter this year and we have, the situation in the Ukraine, and that's just added more complexity to it. I mean, you've got the cost impact because of energy inflation. You've got the fact that you have significant exporters of fertilizers like Russia, and there's concerns about how much is going to be exported. And you're also seeing concerns around grains because Russia and Ukraine are large growers of wheat and large exporters of wheat. So it's just even, it's added even more complexity to the situation. In terms of ammonium sulfate, from our standpoint, we're certainly faced with our own set of challenges around logistics and raw materials and everything else. I think our team has done a great job. I mean, we're in a position right now where we're ready to supply the U.S. market. We've had some issues with moving product out logistically. We were concerned in the fall, and we took some steps to move product more by water than land to get it into the Midwest, and probably a little bit of help from Mother Nature because the season start is delayed. I mean, we're in a good position to supply our customers this spring. And I think in terms of overall supply of both sulfate and fertilizer U.S. market, I think things are going to be tighter than normal. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But we feel pretty good about our ability to supply our key customers.
Well, Mike, great stuff, great insight. And again, on using ammonium sulfate on soybeans as well with AdvanSix. I know folks can learn more about all the research you have out there and just learn more about using ammonium sulfate on soybeans. They could probably do that online, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, if they want to learn more about us as a company, www.advansix.com. If they go to www.sulfin.com, they can find out about lots of stuff about ammonium sulfate and links to our soybean sites as well.
Well, with that, we appreciate the time. Vice President and Business Director of Plant Nutrients with AdvanSix, Mike Hambleton, thanks for joining us today, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay, I appreciate it. You take care.